Good evening, YouTube. It is 9 p.m. in the great state of Texas, and we are reaching underneath my table saw trying to get a hold of that last piece of poplar from last week's project. So if you guys watched last week's project, you guys saw me make a poplar bowl, and essentially we're doing the same thing in today's project that we did last week. So the only thing we're doing different is we're adding a little bit of garnish to the lid of the bowl in this week's project, but it's nearly identical. So if you guys have seen me make one poplar bowl, you guys have kind of seen me make them all. So nothing special or out of the ordinary for this week's project. So getting everything onto the lathe like we usually do. Project goes really well, no issues whatsoever. I spent most of the day actually doing yard work from the dust storm that we had the other day. So I just figured, just finishing up this poplar bowl. I know they're really easy to make. If you guys are into woodworking or you're just getting into woodworking, go to Lowe's and you can get like a beam of poplar for kind of cheap and just practice on it. And that's essentially what we did with today's project. It's not going to look nearly as clean, I think, as last week's project. I don't know what it was about this piece here. Maybe I didn't sand it enough, but you'll see that a little bit later toward the video. But nearly identical in project, but got everything to that nice cylindrical shape that we like, and now we're just going to make our mortise, and then we'll end up cutting these two pieces in half so where we have a lid and a bowl portion of it here. So if you guys have been wondering what I've been up to, I've been doing a lot of yard work here in Texas. It's about 73 degrees right now in my workshop as I'm doing the commentary on this video. And probably here in the next week or two, we'll probably get back to epoxy project, so I won't have to be making poplar bowls. But if you're just trying to keep your skills up, just going back to the basics sometimes is pretty good. And this week I had a little bit better result parting these two pieces here. This is usually the part where I have a lot of issue, but this not particularly eventful project here. Everything came apart really nice and easy, no problems whatsoever. Then we started the gouging portion of it here, which goes really well, just like last week's project, no issues whatsoever. But as the temperature here in Texas starts to warm up, we'll start getting back to the epoxy bowls. Probably next week's project will be an epoxy project. I'm about to pour some resin as soon as I'm done doing the commentary for this video. And I'm just gonna see if I can still work with resin, because if you guys watched maybe like 3 or 4 months ago, I started doing resin projects like I usually do, but I don't know if it was just cold. I just had a bad mixture of epoxy, but it just seemed like every epoxy project that I was doing at the time just was not going well. So we're going to try to get back into epoxy next week, which I'm sure won't be an issue. I think you just have to get back into it, and it's kind of like riding a bike. So hopefully I won't have a lot of issues there, but weirder things have happened to where I just go on these streaks where nothing goes my way. So I'm going to do probably a very small epoxy project next week and see how that kind of goes. But the great thing is I've got a whole bucket of Total Boat epoxy that I'm probably going to use, and that's probably like one of the better resins that you can do for epoxy. So I don't know if it was just the epoxy batch or just my technique at the time, but next week's project more than likely will be a resin project or a resin failure, and that is totally a possibility sometimes on the channel. But getting back to this project here that you're watching, project's going smooth so far. We obviously parted the bowl from the lid portion, and that's what we're working with here, getting that big piece of pine off, and now we're just going to start working the edges of the dome so that we can actually make a lid. And the lid was a lot thicker than I think last week's project was, and for some reason I had a lot more just like tearing out of the wood. I don't know if it was just that portion of it near the top that was just giving me so many issues, but I had a lot of tear out that you can kind of see right there, just that fraying kind of look. And I'm going to do a lot of sanding, and it's actually not even going to be any kind of beneficial. But this is a little bit of garnish that we're putting on the project here. We're going to end up pouring a little bit of resin in the top of it. But this is what all these shavings look like. Boom. Got to clean all this up. Then we'll start the sanding, polishing, and then we'll be nearly done with the project. But just this small little bowl makes this giant mess. And I'm always astonished, even though the project's really small, it's just a lot of work cleaning all that up. So I started with 80 grit, go to 120, go to 180, but I spent a lot of time sanding, and I still couldn't get out that tear out that was on there. You can still see a little bit of it there. Usually I would have hit this with the whatchamacallit, can't think of it, the Workshire grit, I think. Yeah, I can't even think of it. But I didn't end up doing that because of the tear out. The bowl I was just not happy with, and then we're just gonna like finish it up with a little bit of resin on the top of it. I mean, you can't really tell the imperfections just looking at it here, but I'm looking at it right now, and it definitely has a lot of tear out that I just couldn't get done, which kind of scarred up the lid a little bit. But I just throw a little accent piece on this one. This is just like some white glitter, and just getting that mixed up with the 15-minute epoxy, and we're done. So project is nearly identical, but you can kind of see the imperfections here that I'm not too happy about. But next week I think we're going to get back into working with resin, so hopefully that goes well. And if it doesn't, I'm still going to post the video. So here we are, done with Poplar for a little bit. Hope you guys liked it. Hope you got something out of it, and I'll see you guys in the next one. All right, peace.